The saga of Brandon Aiyuk's offseason has officially begun. Would you like to talk about how this saga has begun or where you think it's actually going? Because the way it's begun is pretty much part and parcel of all wide receiver in public negotiations these days. You show up with your sunglasses on, you feel detached, you talk about the Super Bowl you didn't win. You have a sibling or someone, a girlfriend, start putting it out on Instagram. We ain't happy here. This might be our last time here. These are the opening gambits of modern negotiations in NBA contracts. So NFL contracts. It's really not that surprising that it's happening, a little bit disappointing, and a little unaware to me on Team Aiyuk's behalf here, because this is a guy who absolutely blossomed with a quarterback. If you're Brandon Aiyuk, you shouldn't be looking to get away from a guy like Brock Purdy and the 49ers offense. You should be looking to come even deeper into it than ever before. But that doesn't maybe get you the premium price that you're looking for on an open market, which you're not even on yet. So,
well, he's out there, Damon. I mean, the Niners have, Lynch has maintained that he's very important to the 49ers and that they, want to go forward with him. But it's a negotiation, and the Niners have Parag negotiating. Parag's a very tough negotiator. Aiyuk caught 75 balls over 1,300 yards this year. He was an all-pro. But one of the biggest questions of the offseason is, do you trade him or do you sign him? Now, John Lynch has called him a priority, and he's entering his fifth-year option at $14 million. He'd like a player like Aiyuk, quote, to be a part of you going forward. That was the quote from John Lynch.
Well, so, and look, just not to cut you off, but if you're Brandon Aiyuk's agent, you're not letting him out there for a 1-year, $14 million deal.
Well, that's what he's due to make this year, right?
No, I'm saying, but you're looking to renegotiate right now. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah, no doubt. And the question is, does San Francisco want to have, minimum, if you take Debo's 28 and Aiyuk's, 14, you're talking about $42 million devoted to wide receivers this year. That's going to be well over $50 million in future years. You're 32nd in the NFL in pass attempts in 2023. So are you going to pay $50 million when you throw the ball less than any other team in pro football to two wide receivers?
I mean, I would almost look at it like yes, because
you can't trade Debo. So it's not like a lot of people go, well, just trade Debo. Well, no, because Debo's not worth anything. At $28 million, you're only gonna get like a 5th-round pick for Debo.
And then you got the dead cap space or whatever doesn't go over in terms of money. Look, it's just that they gave Debo a bad contract. There's no other way to look at it based on what he's done in the biggest game that he's just played in. And we still like him as a player. There's no doubt that Debo is a perfect Niner in many, many ways, but he's also flawed when you look at the actual salary that's committed to him. And if he were to have a number that stood in the way of doing business with Brandon Aiyuk, who is much more of a one wide receiver. And here's the thing, Brandon Aiyuk isn't a traditional number one wide receiver. He's more like a 1.5. But he's this team's number one receiver, right? I mean, he's the 49ers' best receiver. So what he is in comparison to the NFL really shouldn't matter to the 49ers. I think that they need to bring him back. But if I were to meet you out on the island of, okay, we do throw the ball, the 49ers do throw the ball very, very little. Therefore, saving a little money at wide receiver is something that they got to do, and trading Brandon Aiyuk gets you a return. Not that I want Brandon Aiyuk traded, but Larry, let's say that deal has to go down. What are you asking for? What is a fair ask for John Lynch if you're really dangling Aiyuk?
Yeah, I mean that's the ultimate question. What is the fair price, and who's coming knocking? Now, there's Kansas City needs a wide receiver. I mean, they're going to get a wide receiver this offseason. The Raiders, according to reports, need a wide receiver. They've got the 13th pick in the first round. They also have a couple picks, I think, in round 2. The New York Giants need a wide receiver. They pick in the top 10. Could you get their top 10 pick Would you have to trade more than that? Would you have to be Ayuk in your pick for the top 10 pick? I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what's going to be out there. I would say a middle first round pick is the least that I'd want to take, and I'd probably want to get 2 for 1. So I'd probably want to go,
Picking a player.
Ayuk and a player for a pick and a player, or Ayuk for 2 picks. But one of them's got to be in the first round, and preferably in the middle of the first round, because I think, okay, so if you moved him, what would you do? I think you would turn around and you would want somebody, in the middle of the first round, like a Taliesin Fuaga or J.C. Latham, a plug and play right tackle would probably be your pick if you made that. So would you rather have another wide receiver like Ayuk, or would you rather, trade Ayuk, get a couple picks, and turn them into that blue chip tackle and maybe a replacement wide receiver? It's a tough call. It's a tough call. But when you look at their situation, I would say, and by the way, there is a report out this morning, column by Dan Graziano, ESPN.com, talking through the whole Brandon Aiyuk situation. And the quote, as it pertains to Aiyuk, says the most likely outcome, to me, the most likely way this shakes out is Aiyuk ends up getting traded to a team where he's the clear number 1 wideout, where he can get that extension that he wants, leaving the Niners to draft his replacement. Kind of like the DeForest Buckner situation. And I don't know how I feel about that, because I really like Aiyuk, and he's really, really good. But, there are other receivers in this draft. Brian Thomas from LSU, Xavier Legette from South Carolina, Rice's kid, Brendan Rice, I really like in maybe the 3rd round. So, there's other receivers, and you got to get that blue chip tackle. At some point you have Brock Purdy. You now have to protect him. Now, what's more important, protecting him or giving him weapons? Because Ayuk's his number 1 weapon, especially on those in breaking routes. So it's gonna be a tough call. It's a tough call either way. But if you ask me, bet everything you have on one thing or another. I'm betting they're gonna trade Aiyuk for a mid first round pick, take an offensive lineman, and then replace him in the draft or in free agency. That's the other thing. There's other free agents. You could go sign Calvin Ridley. You could go sign Mike Evans. You could go, and I'm not sure what they would cost. Maybe you could get them cheaper than Aiyuk. I don't know. But there's a bunch of free agents out there too.
Again, I understand it, but I don't like it, especially in Kyle's system. It takes a couple of years to learn it. Who is the plug and play wide receiver that in year 1 with the Niners made a difference? I don't think there is one, Larry.
It wasn't Jerry Rice.
No. But I mean, like, it takes a year or 2, I think.
No, I know. You're right.
And Kyle is extra hard on coaching his wide receivers. Brandon Aiyuk's career began in the doghouse. So many careers began in Kyle's doghouse on that side of the ball. And I just think that finally, here it is. You got the wide receiver and the quarterback, and it is officially clicking. I guess what I'm surprised about here is that Brandon Aiyuk seems to be full of so many sour grapes about this. And maybe, again, it's just performative public negotiations. I don't know. But I'm surprised that Brandon Aiyuk isn't approaching this from let's figure out a way to keep this going, not so much all right, if, maybe it's time for me to move on. It just feels a little funny and strange. And maybe this is, Kyle wearing out his welcome with players a little bit. We know that Debo came very close to this when he was looking at his free agency. He had problems with the way that Kyle was looking at him and wanted to use him. That went to just veteran rest days during practice weeks to, of course, there was the whole element of, is Debo more of a running back and how should he be paid? There was that element that there's no element to that, to the Aiyuk negotiation. I'm just here it is. Finally, a pair of jeans that fit well, and you want a new pair of jeans? I don't like
Well,
it.
the thing about it though is that you can't get tied emotionally. I mean, look at Kansas City; they had to get rid of Tyreek Hill. I mean, this is what's happening to wide receivers all over the league. I mean, AJ Brown was great in Tennessee, and then all of a sudden it was time to pay him, and they're like, "What? We're not paying him." So, it's these are tough decisions. These are really really tough decisions. You can't pay everybody. You've already paid Debo. You're not going to be able to part ways with Debo. You also have Juwan Jennings, who just really played well in the Super Bowl. He's restricted, so you probably want to bring him back. There's always, it seems like every year in the draft is a good year for wide receivers. There's so many teams that play the spread in college that there's just a lot of good wide receivers in every draft. And they badly need a blue chip offensive tackle or two because Trent is probably not going to be, too far away from the end. So they really got to, they got to figure out a way to make it all work. So it's, I don't agree necessarily that, that I'm not in a rush to move Ayuk either, but the 49ers are not going to, if he wants $28 million or $30 million, you're really going to spend $58 million in wide receivers when you don't throw that much. So
Well, maybe
it's going to be a very difficult negotiation. And it sounds like, if you ask me what's going on here with the dialogue and the rhetoric and the tone of the negotiations, is that they probably already exchanged numbers and they're probably worlds apart. And so that's probably Ayuk's camp kind of reacting to Parag's early low offers. And they're saying, hey, look, if those are the offers, get us out of here.
I mean, it's all about guaranteed dollars, and how you whack that up is where you need a creative front office guy like Parag to make it all fit. How about this? I think you are playing a dangerous game here because there are very few wide receivers who affect a running game the way that Brandon Aiyuk does. Brandon Aiyuk is a fierce downfield blocker. He's got all sorts of squabbles and is bought in to being a blocking wide receiver when the play is being run his way for McCaffrey or whoever. And that is a tough thing to cash in because I think you not only slow down your own passing attack by having to groom another first option wide receiver, but you slow down your running attack because you have Aiyuk out and you're probably losing Juwan Jennings. And Juwan Jennings and Brandon Aiyuk in different uniforms, I think automatically mean Christian McCaffrey isn't as good next year as he was this past year because those two guys open up huge lanes for him. So how can this 49er team not miss a beat by saying goodbye to both Juwan Jennings and Brandon Aiyuk? You hurt your passing game and your running game with those guys gone.